Everybody, Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio. We are here every Wednesday, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern, Sports Byline Broadcasting Network, as well as twitch.tv/F4W video, F4WOnline.com/YouTube, and we're streaming live on basically anywhere you can listen to Sports Byline. It includes TuneIn Radio, and we got a lot to talk about here today. No guest for today. We had a guest scheduled. I have not heard from the guest. I believe this guest was scheduled prior, and we also didn't hear from the guest. So we probably, at this point, are never going to have this guest on. I will not mention who the guest was. But we got a lot to get into otherwise, because I can go solo. I got a lot to talk about here today. You know, for the last several weeks, I've been reading, of course, what better time to read books about the paranormal than before bed? And that's kind of my new thing. I found if you like turn off all of your devices and you read like a physical book before bed, you go to sleep a lot faster and sleep a lot deeper. Although I have some weird dreams sometimes. But recently I read this Pacific Northwest Legends and Lore. Grabbed this at actually the Maritime Museum in Astoria, Oregon. Ira Wesley Kitmacher is the author. Some interesting stories in that book. We'll talk about some of that here today. We've also got some news stories. There are a lot of weird things going on in After Dark land here, including a mysterious crash near Area 51, which is weird enough, but then it got weirder. We'll talk about the Easter Island statues, the Easter Island heads, which you may learn something today if you only know about the heads, because they're actually entire bodies. We'll talk about that and plenty more. And, of course, you can email us if you got paranormal stories. I'd love to hear them. Bryan at AfterDarkRadioShow.com. That is Bryan at AfterDarkRadioShow.com. Get your emails in. I'll try to read some today. Back in a moment. After Dark Radio, Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. Man, the show, Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio. We are here every Wednesday, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. And we are here with a lot to get into here. Tune in radio. You can always listen to Sports Byline, f4wonline.com/YouTube, twitch.tv/f4w video. You can watch live as well. Hello to everybody in the chat. You got anything you want to talk about? You can let me know. But a lot to get into here today. I've been promising for a while I'm going to talk about some of the stories in this book. I'll get to that here in a while. But as we have no guest, I want to talk about a little bit of news because there is always something going on in all of this. And I actually want to start with this. So, as some of you may have heard, perhaps not, there was a crash recently near Area 51. Of course, you know, Area 51, I think it's pretty much acknowledged it exists. I think everyone knows it exists. It's not a secret anymore. It was a secret for many years. But in fact, it does exist. And interestingly enough, when you live in Seattle, where I live, and you want to fly to Las Vegas, well, if you flew in a straight line, you would basically fly right over Area 51. Therefore, you don't fly in a straight line. You've got to go, and then you've got to go around over the top and then back down again. So it's obviously restricted airspace. You can't just fly over it. Well, this is from thedebrief.org. Officials have revealed an odd turn of events following ongoing investigations into a mysterious crash in the Nevada desert last month, which occurred near the classified U.S. Air Force facility Area 51. On September 23rd, 2025, a non-fatal crash involving an aircraft was reported northeast of Las Vegas near the famous high-security facility, prompting the Federal Aviation Administration to issue a temporary flight restriction covering a 5 nautical mile area east of the secretive base. The TSR advised the restrictions were in place for reasons involving national security. Site of the crash was subsequently cleared by U.S. Air Force officials. There were no fatalities, injuries, or property damage, read a statement provided by the 432nd Air Expedient, whatever. Anyway, the incident is under investigation, the statement read, adding that no additional details were available about the situation at the time. This all changed last weekend when they issued a new release providing the first official update on the situation in several days, which included a series of puzzling new developments. During a follow-up site survey on October 3rd, investigators discovered signs of tampering at the mishap location, including the presence of an inert training bomb body and an aircraft panel of unknown origin that were placed on the site post-incident. The debrief reached out and there was no response. So, essentially what happened is something crashed near Area 51 on September 23rd. Of course, early in the article, it talked about how there had been no fatalities, and so when you hear that, when you hear no fatalities, you presume people were on the aircraft and they didn't die. No fatalities. Well, the no fatalities might have been because there was nobody on it. Might have been an unmanned aerial vehicle, and this thing crashed, and they kind of shut down everything in the surrounding area. And then later, they found that other things had been put there after the crash. An aircraft panel of unknown origin and an inert training bomb body. So, obviously this got everybody talking. What it is, I don't know. Why it was put there post-incident, I don't know. I don't know anything, but that's certainly a fascinating addition to this story. Something was flying near Area 51, crashed, and then afterwards, more material, unknown material, was added to the crash site. So, very interesting, and if there's anything more on that, we'll follow up on it. But a very strange story there. Also want to mention this because, as you're all well aware, this show, and actually, if you're a Wrestling Observer subscriber or listener to Wrestling Observer Live, all of this exists because of the Art Bell Show. Coast to Coast AM, Dreamland, listened to it a lot in the 90s. And I was reading this article here. This is from unexplained-mysteries.com. And it says, in 1927, a radio experiment tried to prove that telepathy exists. It says, back in 1927, a group of scientists, headed up by a physicist named Sir Oliver Lodge, backed by the Society for Psychical Research, decided they were going to conduct an experiment to determine whether it was possible for humans to send messages to one another telepathically. So 6 volunteers were sealed in a room. It was broadcast live on BBC Radio. Each volunteer was shown a series of objects, ranging from playing cards to pictures and hats. While they were focusing on the object, the listeners were asked to write down what they thought the object was and then send in their answers at the end. Around 25,000 people wrote in with their thoughts on what the objects were. Only a few of the listeners actually identified any of them. 5 people correctly guessed a picture of a skull, a few others vaguely matching a man in a mask and a hat. The researchers said they were, quote, swamped by the very large mass of failures, indicating statistical chance rather than evidence of telepathic communication. So anyway, the point is, so many people participated that if every single one of them tried to guess what these people were seeing, statistically somebody's going to come close, or I guess there was maybe one hit or whatever. So you can't really say it was telepathy. So I bring this up because, I guess it would have been 60 years later, about, when Art was doing Coast to Coast, 60, 70 years later, when Art was doing Coast to Coast in Dreamland, for a while there, he was also experimenting with the idea of, can I get to this vast listenership? Remember they were like on 400 stations or whatever, and they allegedly had, 12 million listeners or whatever every night. He thought, well, can I do some experiments here? I'll get everybody to, think of something at the same time, and we'll try to make a change in the world. I think this probably stemmed from a show I'm sure that he did maybe several times, talking about I think they're the Stanford eggs. It's random number generators, and they found that, when big incidents occur, that 9/11, for example, where, at one point on one day at one time, millions and millions of people are having an emotional reaction at the exact same time. Can it affect these random number generators? And they found that the answer is yes, which actually I should talk more about after the break. But anyway, Art did this same type of experiment. It was different, but he wanted his whole audience to see if they could find a way working together to make some change in the physical world. And he believed that he got it to work. And then he said that the fact that he had got it to work scared him, and so he was never going to do it again. I'm not exactly sure what it was that he felt he had changed, but whatever it was, he felt that the mass consciousness of his audience had made a change in the physical world, and he said that it scared him, and so he stopped doing those experiments. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. 70 years later, Art did basically the same experiment that they did in 1927 on the BBC, trying to see if their listeners could guess objects written down by 6 volunteers sealed in a room. Probably talk more about those eggs after the break. After Dark Radio, Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio. Oh my God. I just got my kids' school pictures, and they're amazing. Oh my Lord. All right, well, we got a lot to get into here today, so let's continue on. So these eggs, Global Consciousness Project is what it is. And Art used to do a lot of shows on this, and I haven't heard about it for many years. But it was a parapsychology. It is a parapsychology experiment begun in 1998 as an attempt to detect possible interactions of global consciousness with physical systems. Project monitors a geographically distributed network of hardware random number generators in a bid to identify anomalous outputs that correlate with widespread emotional responses to sets of world events. Got that? Or periods of focused attention by large groups of people. Privately funded through the Institute of Noetic Scientists. So this is like a real thing. This is not some weird gimmick. Princeton. It's Princeton. The Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab. It's been going on for quite a while. Roger D. Nelson developed it. Began using random number generator technology in the field to study effects of special states of group consciousness. So, essentially what they did, I basically explained it earlier. They have all of these random number generators, and it just, it'd be a straight line or whatever. And then they check to see if it ever, like, statistically, any statistical anomalies up or down. And I think what's most interesting, it says here, the GCP has suggested changes in the level of randomness may have occurred during the September 11 attacks when the planes first impacted, as well as in the 2 days following the attacks. Some people have argued this. Independent scientists Edwin May and James Spottiswoode conducted an analysis of the data around the attacks, concluded there was no statistically significant change in the randomness of the data, and the apparent significant deviation existed only in their chosen time window. Spikes and fluctuations are to be expected in any random distribution of data. There is no set time frame for how close a spike has to be to a given event for the GCP to say they have found a correlation. So the reason I bring that up, and also that line is very important. There is no set time frame for how close a spike has to be to a given event for the GCP to say they have found a correlation. So basically, it's like any, it's like if you read Nostradamus. It's like he had all these predictions, and they're all just vague, whatever. And then you go back later when something happens. Oh, I think that if you interpret this the right way, maybe he predicted it. But there's never the prediction of, on such and such a date, such and such will happen specifically. It's always, you have to interpret it based on something that's already happened. So what they're saying is, you have the data, you see the spike. Well, what happened on that day? You go back. Was it really that caused the spike? Or did the spike happen to take place for whatever reason? You're attributing it to this or whatever. So anyway, obviously, there are people who very much believe, Roger D. Nelson, that this has worked in statistically significant ways based on certain events, 9/11 being one of them. And one of the things that I found was interesting about it is, when the thing said there's no, how do you determine a time frame? Like, should it happen immediately? Should it happen afterwards? Let's say the planes hit the building. Should it be that moment, or should it be the moment that everybody, we all turn on the news 10 minutes later? Now, far more people are having an emotional reaction. Should the spike come there, or, what's the answer? And what was interesting is, a lot of these events that have a spike, they have found that sometimes the spike begins before the event. And of course, your first thought would be, well, if it happened before the event, it probably was unrelated to the event because the event hadn't happened yet. But, there are other arguments that, well, we don't really know a lot about time. It seems like we do, but we really don't. And there are people that believe that It is a function of time that the random number generator basically starts to go crazy before the event, as opposed to after the event. So, who knows? It's certainly. I'm always interested in actual, like this is a legitimate years long ongoing study at Princeton. It's not some guy that decided he was going to do this or whatever. It's done at a very high level institution. It's been going on for a long time. So someday we should have a guest on talking about this, because I would certainly like to know more. So, yeah, the double slit experiment, this person is saying. I don't know exactly. When I was a kid, I was too young. I don't even understand it now, and I never will, because I don't understand math or physics or anything like that. But there was I think it was maybe Time magazine, and I think the article was something about. In fact, if anybody has this or can point me to it, I'd like to read about it, 40 years later, so maybe I could understand it. But it was basically talking about Einstein and the theory of relativity and time, and this theory that we all see time as pointing in one direction. I do something, and then I do something, and then there's another event, and it's like all going forward, and it doesn't go backwards. And essentially, this article was talking about how the arrow of time seems to go both directions. The arrow of time goes forward and backwards. And as I was a kid at the time, I didn't buy the magazine. I just saw the cover, and I was like, what? I remember this to this day. It, stuck with me. How could the arrow of time go forward and backwards? That doesn't make any sense. But there's a lot in physics that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not even sure that addition makes sense to me half the time. But anyway, I would like to... I would like to know more about that. It's very much like my daughter Paisley. She's not very good at math, and she's determined. She goes, "Daddy, could I enter a math competition?" It's kind of like, if you're really excited to come in last, I didn't say that, but she ain't entering a math competition, but she's really interested in it. That's me. I'm really interested in, I want to understand quantum physics and all of this stuff, but I don't get it. But anyway, the arrow of time, whatever the heck it is. All right, we also got this one here. There was an article of all places. Are you ready for this? Housebeautiful.com. I guess it is a website about how to make your house beautiful. Fall table decor, best kitchen designs, small space ideas, fall flowers. Well, in the lifestyle section, these are the most haunted houses in every state, and their backstories are chilling. It's a list of the most haunted houses in every state. You can find this at housebeautiful.com. And actually, it was just published 2 weeks ago. So what I'm going to do here is the first person in the chat to tell me what state they live in, I'm going to tell you the most scary thing in your state. And then we're going to move to Washington, because there's actually a very famous one here. All right, Maryland. Maryland came in first. Sorry. I know everybody wants to hear their state, but looks like Maryland was the winner. So... all right, Maryland. Maryland is the Hager House. Hagerstown. Dating back to 1739, this historic house is believed to still be the home of two families of ghosts. Visitors have heard disembodied voices and witnessed items moving on their own. You thought you were stressed out when the visitors came over to your house. And there's a link if you want to follow the link. onlyinyourstate.com, Maryland. You can read about the terrifying places in Maryland. But anyway, of course, as we all do, I saw this article, and I had to find out what's the most haunted place in Washington. I already know. This is easy, I thought. Turns out I was wrong. They list the most haunted house in Washington as the Campbell House in Spokane. Though it's a gorgeous home, the Campbell House has a sad past. One night in the early 1900s, a burglar murdered 3 of the 4 Campbell family children. The last was kidnapped, never returned. Today, visitors report an unsettling feeling when entering the home and being followed by the eyes in a family portrait, like it's Scooby-Doo. There's a family portrait, and you walk by it, and its eyes follow you. So that's listed as the most haunted house in Washington. But I think we all know what the actual most haunted house in Washington is. And that is the famous Bothell Hell House. So the Bothell Hell House, Bothell is like, it's not like a big city, but it like stretches really far. So like, I don't know exactly where the Bothell Hell House is, but I know the general area because I just do. I don't want people to find out where the house is, but I know the general area of the house, and it is not what I would consider Bothell. It's way far north, basically around Mill Creek. But it is the Bothell Hell House. We'll tell you why it's haunted after the break. It's actually pretty famous. Books and TV shows about it. And then we'll get into some other stuff as well. Back in a moment, After Dark Radio on the Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. We're back here on the show. Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio, every Wednesday, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. What bizarre thing happened today, Dom?
So it's funny. Rick Tittle, who hosts Titillating Sports here on Sports Byline in the morning, did an entire segment about a haunted hotel in Milwaukee. And I'm not going to say he totally knew that After Dark was going to be on just a few hours after his show. But here you are talking about haunted locales across the United States.
Wow. Well, for Wisconsin, I can tell you that it's a house listed here. The Octagon House, Fond du Lac, is listed as the most haunted location in all of Wisconsin. Weird shadows, mysterious moving items, and the ghost of a young boy have all been witnessed there. So, what a coincidence. We're gonna look at California since Sports Byline's there in the Bay Area. All right, Dom, have you heard of the Whaley House in San Diego?
I have not. To be fair, nowhere near the Bay Area, but I have not heard of it.
Well, you're a little way as well. I guess that's true, isn't it? Anyway, now museum, the Whaley House was owned a private home for Thomas Whaley and his family. Unfortunately, the home was built on the site of a gruesome hanging, and the victim was said to have haunted the Whaley family on the regular. Years later, Whaley's daughter, Violet, died by suicide, though her spirit hasn't been spotted at the home. Those of Thomas and his wife have been. So there you go. Winchester Mystery House in San Jose also is listed here.
Been there.
Yeah. I actually haven't, believe it or not, and I've been to San Jose many times. I might have to go there sometime. Anyway, this Bothell Hell House. So it's a weird story. It is located probably about 20 minutes from where I live, near Mill Creek, I've been told. And these Keith and Tina Linder were married, and Keith got a job in Seattle at Microsoft, and they moved into this house. And basically, it started out, mildly haunted. They would hear a noise, didn't know what it was, thought it was something else, and then eventually began to escalate. There would be, I think they had a plate that spun around and then fell back down on the ground or whatever. And eventually, there were like knives magically being thrown or whatever, and forks and everything like that. And ended up, they got divorced and moved out. And Keith claims that these spirits had followed him. So, we've had many guests on talking about ghosts. I don't know what I think about ghosts, but I've had many guests on to think about them. And, what they say is usually there's two types of hauntings. And really, whether you believe in ghosts or not, people report two different types of hauntings. One of them is the house that is haunted. And the house is haunted. You move in, it's haunted. You move out, it's still haunted. Next people move in, it's haunted. Then there's the hauntings where there's a ghost that manifests and makes your life a living hell, a Bothell Hell House hell. And then you leave and it goes with you, okay? So it's usually one or the other. But the interesting thing about the Bothell Hell House is apparently it's both. Because first off, the house is fairly new. It was built in 2005. So this isn't like a house, that's been around for 70 years and, so-and-so died and then new people moved in and whatever. It had been a new house in 2005. Less than 20 years old, or about 20 years old. Actually, when they bought it, it was 7 years old. So they move in and, all these weird things happen. And then I think one of the things was they actually had a TV show. What was the name of the show? Let's see if I can find it. Ghost Adventures. Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures. They went to investigate, and they used all of their gimmicks, their EVP things, whatever, and they picked up nothing. And so, obviously, Keith was very upset about that. And so it says he fell into a deep depression. The Ghost Adventures investigation finding nothing left him feeling like he was going nuts. And so anyway, he called in this other guy, Don Phillips, a renowned paranormal investigator. So then Don comes out, and Don claims that he captured over 400 audible recordings of ghosts, 28 direct responses to their questions. They even made contact, it said, with the apparitions directly. The main poltergeist was that of an elderly woman with a disheveled appearance. Hair was scattered, clothes were torn. Emotions a mix of confusion, fear, and anger. Also the ghost of a small child. They'd heard children coughing when they first moved in. That was the first sign. So anyway, eventually, they get divorced. He moves out. But he claims the house is still haunted, but also the spirits have followed him to his new apartment. So I think that's unusual. It's usually like one or the other, but that is his claim. And that is the story of the Bothell Hell House. And it's been on Ghost Adventures. I believe that he wrote a book about it. Yeah, he did. And there's a whole bunch of news articles. It's always amazing when I see some of these stories, and it's like there was a story in the Bothell Reporter, which is like this tiny local newspaper near where I live. And the fact that the Bothell Reporter in 2019 did a story, The Haunting of Hell House Continues, inside the sequel to the Bothell Hell House. So there you go. That's the most haunted place, one of the most haunted places in Washington State. Which reminds me, by the way, that I've been reading this book. Shall we talk about it? I went to what's it called? Columbia River Maritime Museum in Astoria, Oregon, which if you ever go to Astoria, you should check out the Columbia River Maritime Museum. My kids actually love the museum. There's all sorts of, there's like model boats for them to play in. There's actually a boat moored out front that you can go on and tour everything. It's pretty cool. But anyway, they got a little gift shop, which of course we always have to go into. And they've got these books, and I came across this one, Pacific Northwest Legends and Lore by Ira Wesley Kitmacher. And it's Washington, Oregon, some Idaho. And it's not all Bigfoot. There are a lot of stories of hauntings in the book. And what I found fascinating is how many of these are tied to basically the Cannon Beach area. There's actually a whole bunch of them. There's Cape Disappointment, which is it's a little ways from Cannon Beach, 20 minutes. It's near the Maritime Museum. The Graveyard of the Pacific, which is basically the same deal. The Terrible Tilly Lighthouse, which literally at Cannon Beach, I can look out the window of the condo, and there's a Terrible Tilly Lighthouse right there. And then there is hopefully my kids don't ever find out about this one, the Bandage Man of Cannon Beach. All of these spooky things around Cannon Beach. I'll talk about some of them here in a second, but I was entertained because I read the book, and also in the book, not Oregon, but around here, is the 13 Steps to Hell, which I've talked about many times on this show. There is a place called the Maltby Cemetery, and it's about half hour from my house, maybe a little bit less. And when I was in high school, it was the haunted place to go to. The Maltby Cemetery, the 13 Steps to Hell. And allegedly there was a cemetery, and it's all in the book. They talk about the legend of, you go down, and if you get to the final step, I think in the book they say you get a vision of hell. The story we were told when I was in school was you would actually go into hell if you got to the 13th step. And it was supposed to be, very haunted. And, when I was in 11th, 12th grade, we all went on a expedition to the Maltby Cemetery to try to find the 13 steps. And, in fact, they no longer existed. They built a bunch of houses there. And we clearly were not the only kids going to try to find the Maltby Cemetery and the 13 Steps to Hell, because there are no trespassing signs everywhere. And, there's... I don't know if they had some sort of, community neighborhood watch or something, but like every time we went out there was always somebody that was kind of milling around. And if you tried to like park he'd like kick you out. You weren't supposed to be there. So we never actually found the Maltby Cemetery. We never actually found the 13 steps. But it is funny because if you go online even to this day and you Google the 13 Steps to Hell, there's all of these, Reddit or wherever, people that talk about it, and everyone's got a different story about where it is and if it's still there and can you find it and the whole shebang. So there you go. So this Bandage Man, this is from the Cannon Beach History Center and Museum, which actually I've never been to, but I should go there. It says here, it is October. That means it's officially spooky season. First story I want to share is one I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the tale of the Bandage Man, who is said to haunt the stretch of Highway 101 near Cannon Beach. You know how many times I've driven this Highway 101 near Cannon Beach? Countless. The Bandage Man first made an appearance in the 1950s. He is said to be the mummy of a logger who was hacked up in a sawmill accident. It's a bad way to go. Wrapped completely in bloody bandages, smelling of rotting flesh. He is said to haunt a stretch of Highway 101 between the Highway 26 junction to the north entrance of Cannon Beach, sometimes even as far down as Arch Cape. I also heard he was an injured fireman, electrician, the list goes on. What stays consistent in the story is the bandages. Like most folklore, the Bandage Man mostly targets teens in parked cars. On occasion, he is said to target moving vehicles, like open-top cars or pickup trucks. He'll jump into the back of the vehicle and then mysteriously vanishes before reaching town. Most of the time, people do not become aware of his presence until his rotting stench reaches your nose. The Bandage Man feeds on dogs and small animals, and occasionally the unlucky person, it says. In the 1960s, pranks and tales of the Bandage Man were commonplace. But these days, most people haven't heard this local urban legend. One source told me the story was told to frighten tourists, but who is to say it's definitely taken on a life of its own? I'm pretty sure if you want to keep tourists away, you don't want to tell the story of the Bandage Man, because if anything, they're all going to be coming to town to find this guy. And there's also the story of the Lady of Cannon Beach, who was I guess, a ghost. But anyway, a lot of these different things, like Cape Disappointment, trying to get from the Pacific Ocean to the Columbia River, you go over the Columbia River Bar, and it's like the most dangerous bar in the entire world. And like so many ships have gone down, shipwrecks, and people killed. And, I always knew about this stuff, but I was unaware that apparently all of these places are massively haunted, they claim. So, like, in fact, in Astoria, I think there's an Astoria, there's a theater there that's allegedly haunted. A lot of hauntings in and around the mouth of the Columbia River. The lighthouse is said to be haunted. The Terrible Tilly Lighthouse, which apparently was about the worst place you could possibly work while it was still in operation. And I guess later, after it was no longer used as a lighthouse, they used it to store the ashes of cremated bodies. Yeah. Beautiful timing, Dom. Back in a moment. Observer Live. Bryan Alvarez here, After Dark Radio, Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. We only have a couple of minutes left, but this from unexplained-mysteries.com. A husband in India has reportedly claimed his wife has a rather odd nocturnal habit. Most domestic disputes concern infidelity, alcoholism, or financial troubles. But for one couple in India, the main complaint is that the wife keeps turning into a snake in the middle of the night. It was reported by her husband, Miraj, who told officials about the issue during a day typically designated to bring local problems to the district magistrate. My wife, Nasiman, is mentally unstable and spends the nights pretending to be a noggin, hissing and scaring me. My wife tries to kill me every night. My life was saved because I woke up at that time. She's mentally torturing me. More likely to kill me when I am sleeping. She has bitten me more than once. According to his wife, he is making up stories because he wants to marry someone else. So that is the dispute between these two going on in India right now. We got to wrap it up, everybody. We're out of time. But hey, if you enjoy the show, you can always check out WrestlingObserver.com. All of the archives of After Dark are available there. And we have dozens and dozens of episodes. Every episode since we restarted here on Sports Byline is also available on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. F4WOnline.com/Spotify, F4WOnline.com/Apple. Check them out. Back next week with a brand new show. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. After Dark Radio, Sports Byline, Broadcasting Network.